December 1944. A German Panther sits in the snow, its engine idling low, its crew scanning a frozen field through fogged optics. Then, there it is, an American M10 tank destroyer, about 800 meters out, exposed against the white landscape. Inside the Panther, the gunner exhales slowly. He begins the familiar ritual: range the target, adjust elevation, fine-tune the traverse. This is routine. They have done this dozens, maybe hundreds of times. Find the range. Dial it in. Fire. Kill. The American fires first. The round misses. And then, the tank destroyer disappears. Not destroyed. Not disabled. Gone. 30 seconds later, another shot cracks across the field, this time from nearly 200 meters to the left. The shell slams into the Panther's side armor, punching through steel that was never meant to be hit from that angle. The German crew never fires a single round. That was not luck. That was doctrine. It was the American tactic known as shoot and scoot, a method so disruptive, so infuriating, that it left German Panzer crews feeling like they were fighting ghosts. And in the process, it quietly reshaped armored warfare in Europe. This is the story of how American tank destroyers won battles, not with thicker armor or bigger guns, but by refusing to fight fair. To understand why shoot and scoot worked so well, you have to understand how German tank crews were trained to fight. German armored doctrine in the Second World War emphasized precision, protection, and overwhelming firepower. Tanks like the Panther and the Tiger carried guns powerful enough to destroy American Shermans at ranges where American guns struggled to penetrate in return. That technical edge shaped their battlefield philosophy. Find strong ground. Establish range superiority. Use armor and optics to dismantle the enemy methodically. German gunnery training was exceptional. Crews drilled constantly, learning to calculate range, adjust for target movement, compensate for wind and terrain. A skilled gunner could land accurate hits at 1,500 meters with impressive consistency. But precision takes time. The engagement sequence was deliberate. Spot the target. Determine the range, sometimes 15 to 20 seconds. Adjust elevation and turret position. Fire a ranging shot. Observe the impact. Correct the aim. Fire again. Against stationary or slow-moving targets, this system was devastating. German tanks could sit in prepared positions and destroy enemy armor piece by piece. But the entire system depended on one assumption. The target would stay put long enough for the sequence to work. American tank destroyers shattered that assumption. The American approach to anti-tank warfare was fundamentally different. Vehicles like the M10, the M18 Hellcat, and the M36 were not designed to trade blows in prolonged duels. They were built to ambush, strike hard, and vanish before the enemy could respond. The M18 Hellcat perfectly embodied that philosophy. Its armor was thin, barely enough to stop machine gun fire, and completely vulnerable to a German 88mm shell. But it carried an effective 76mm gun, capable at realistic combat ranges. And most importantly, it was fast. On roads, the Hellcat could reach 55 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest tracked armored vehicles of the entire war. American doctrine embraced that speed. Tank destroyer crews were trained never to sit and exchange fire with a Panther. In a static duel, they would lose. Instead, they were taught to use concealment, fire immediately, and relocate before return fire arrived. They were hunters, not duelists. Their job was not to hold ground, not to prove superiority, not to fight honorably. Their job was simple: kill enemy tanks and survive to do it again. Official doctrine was blunt. A tank destroyer fires, and then it moves. It does not remain to exchange shots. This was not cowardice. It was intelligent warfare. Why give a German gunner 20 seconds to calculate a perfect shot when you could be somewhere else before he finishes? So how did shoot and scoot actually work in combat? Let's walk through it. Phase 1. Preparation. American crews selected concealed positions, behind hedgerows, inside tree lines, hull down behind ridges. They ensured clear fields of fire, but also escape routes. Before the first shot was fired, they already knew where they would move next. Often, they had 2 or 3 alternate positions planned in advance. Everyone inside the vehicle knew the plan. Phase 2. Immediate engagement. When a German tank appeared, the American gunner did not waste time on a ranging shot. He aimed for the most vulnerable point visible and fired to kill. Hit or miss, the German crew now knew a threat existed. Phase 3. Relocation. Within seconds, not minutes, the tank destroyer reversed into cover or accelerated toward its alternate position. Speed was survival. Hesitation meant death. A Hellcat could relocate 200 to 300 meters in under 30 seconds. Phase 4. Shock. From a completely new angle, while German optics remained fixed on the original location, the American crew fired again. To the German tankers, it was disorienting. A target appeared. The engagement process began. Then the target vanished. Moments later, a shell arrived from an entirely different direction. Turrets swung. Traverse gears strained. And again, nothing. The American vehicle was already moving. This shattered the rhythm German gunnery depended on. German tanks had excellent guns and optics. But their method required time. Shoot and scoot removed time from the equation. Fire immediately. Move immediately. Deny the enemy the chance to complete his cycle. Even mechanics worked against the Germans. Heavy tanks like the Tiger required roughly a minute to rotate the turret a full 360 degrees using manual traverse. When an American vehicle struck from one bearing and reappeared 90 degrees away, the German gunner had to crank that heavy turret toward the new threat. By the time the sights aligned, the American was gone again. There was also the psychological toll. German crews were trained for controlled, methodical engagements. Shoot and scoot introduced uncertainty. Was there one tank destroyer, or several? Were they surrounded? Where would the next shot come from? In armored combat, hesitation kills. Range finding became unreliable. German optics relied on triangulation, which required relative stability. A vehicle that fires and instantly relocates renders that data useless. By the time a firing solution was calculated, the American tank destroyer was no longer there. Certain terrain made the tactic even more devastating. Broken ground, hedgerows, forests, rolling hills allowed rapid masking of movement. In the Normandy bocage, thick hedges divided fields into natural compartments. A tank destroyer could fire from one hedgerow, reverse through a hidden gap, and reappear 100 meters away along an entirely different line. German crews might focus on empty terrain while a flank shot was already incoming. Poor visibility amplified the chaos. Fog, snow, and rain reduced sight lines to a few hundred meters. That neutralized German long-range advantages. At those shorter distances, the American 76mm gun was fully capable, and rapid relocation became nearly impossible to track. Urban combat was even worse. In towns and cities, a tank destroyer could fire down an alley, reverse behind a building, cross a courtyard, and emerge on another street before the enemy could reorient. German tanks, constrained by rubble and narrow streets, struggled to track a threat that seemed to multiply. In early 1945, during fighting inside Germany, a single M18 reportedly destroyed 3 German tanks in 10 minutes by firing from 3 different streets. The German crews believed they were facing multiple vehicles. It was just one. The pattern played out repeatedly. During the Battle of Arracourt in September 1944, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, equipped with M18 Hellcats, faced Panthers of the German 5th Panzer Army. On paper, the Panthers held the advantage in armor and firepower, and often in numbers. In one engagement, an M18 fired from a tree line and destroyed the lead Panther. It immediately relocated 200 meters. The remaining German tanks advanced toward the original position, firing at a threat that no longer existed. From its new angle, the Hellcat struck again, destroying a second Panther from the flank. It moved once more and eliminated a third. Convinced they were facing a larger force, the German formation withdrew. The same principle appeared during the Ardennes Offensive in December 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. Near St. Vith, M10 tank destroyers of the 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion engaged German armor in dense fog, where visibility dropped below 100 meters. The Americans fired from concealed roadside positions, damaged or destroyed vehicles, then shifted before return fire could be organized. One M10 crew reportedly knocked out 4 German tanks over 2 hours by moving between prepared positions, firing briefly, then disappearing again. German commanders halted their advance, uncertain of what they were facing. The Germans tried to adapt. They increased infantry coordination, hoping foot soldiers could spot relocation routes and guide tank fire more quickly. In theory, it could work. In the chaos of late 1944, it rarely did. Some crews fired faster, sacrificing precision for speed. That diluted one of their greatest strengths, disciplined gunnery, and often reduced engagements to chaotic close-range fights. Others attempted ambushes of their own, waiting to catch tank destroyers mid-movement. Occasionally, it succeeded. More often, combat pressure made patience difficult. By 1944 and 1945, German after-action reports acknowledged American mobility tactics as a persistent problem, one with no easy solution. Shoot and scoot was more than a battlefield trick. It represented a shift in thinking. German doctrine emphasized quality, thicker armor, heavier guns, individual superiority. American doctrine emphasized numbers, speed, and tactical flexibility. Mobility became armor. The M18 Hellcat proved that avoiding a hit could be more valuable than surviving one. Instead of absorbing punishment, American crews chose not to be where the enemy aimed. That philosophy carried forward into the Cold War. Rapid firing followed by swift displacement became standard anti-tank practice. Even modern missile teams operate on the same principle: strike first, move immediately. Shoot and scoot did not win the war by itself, but it proved something critical. Tactics and training can overcome technical inferiority. German tanks often had superior armor and heavier guns. Their crews were disciplined professionals. But American tank destroyer crews refused to fight on those terms. They would not sit still. They would not trade shots. They would not grant the enemy the time his doctrine required. They appeared. They fired. They vanished. To German Panzer crews trained for precision, it felt like fighting ghosts. Targets materialized, discharged lethal fire, and dissolved into the terrain, sometimes from multiple directions within minutes. Their rhythm broke. Their calculations faltered. Their advantages turned into vulnerabilities. And the lesson still stands. When facing a stronger opponent, victory does not always come from matching strength for strength. Sometimes, it comes from changing the rules of the fight entirely. American tank destroyer crews understood that, and across the battlefields of Europe, they drove German Panzer crews absolutely mad.